Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So the book that I am reviewing for you today is Northern Tradition for the Solitary Practitioner. I'm going to butcher these names. I believe it is, oh let me get it in my light, Galina, Krasskova and Raven Kaldera. This is them. And you may also know the name, I mean they've both done other works before, but where did I see it? Is it in the back or the front? I know that one of the authors has another book that I've seen. I've now ordered for myself. It probably won't be here for a few days. But I've seen a book somewhere that she has done. I've seen on eBay and stuff in different lists. Am I being stupid? It's on the back. So this one is by Galina Krasskova, and it's that tiny little one. I'm trying to get it in a good lighting, but it seems to be impossible. It's called Exploring the Northern Tradition. So this book, on the front cover it says, Northern Tradition for the Solitary Practitioner, a book of prayer, devotional practice and the 9 worlds of spirit. I really like this book. Sorry, I keep kind of forgetting that I'm on. Maybe I can turn you this way a bit. Oh no, don't ruin anything, Mandy. I have a habit of ruining things. I'll just hold it up here. So this book I really enjoyed. I like the fact that it is exactly what it says it is, in the sense that it's a book for a solitary practitioner. Now, I myself as a published author understand how difficult it is. My book was called Eclectic Wicca, and in that title gives it its framework, just like this book, Northern Tradition for the Solitary Practitioner. That's what gives it its framework. And with all of the pressures on you, especially when you're writing a book from a beginner's point of view, it's very hard to actually write it based within your framework of coming from a certain point of view, because in today's world we're kind of very worried about offending other people, and so you feel like you have to mention other people, you have to mention that you're not trying to offend other people, you know, and all of this stuff. And it's something that I really struggled with, and I think this book does a really good job of that. They really do keep it to a solitary practitioner. They do dabble and give you other information should you want to know about groups, and it's kind of a really difficult topic to cover if you don't talk about any form of groups, because there are so many northern traditions, Nordic religions, spiritualities, beliefs, Asatru, the Reconstructionists. There are so many different groups of people that to just talk about being a solitary practitioner, you'd kind of lose a lot of that, if that makes sense. So I've done exactly the same to this one. This one's in yellow, so some of you won't find that as blaspheming as much. My friend Laura, she's in the coven with me, and she often says like, oh my god, I can't believe you're writing books, blaspheme, because she couldn't write in a book. So I can understand that if you can't. Personally, I love to do it. So the thing that I thought was really nice about this book is they really go back to basics. So they do cover things like ritual, but they don't go into hardcore, this is how they did it, but you know, style books, mainly because it's so difficult to do that with a religion based on history that the majority of it has been lost. When we look at the the Eddas and the sagas and the history, the scripture of the lore of the northern traditions, we are unsure what was written as fantasy, you know, stories at the time, or what was meant to be taken literally, and so it's very much kind of a see how it feels for you kind of thing. Not everybody will agree with that, but that's how I see it, and that is very much the point of view in this book. Now, I think the thing I liked so much about this book, it's written by the two of them, obviously, and I like how they kind of chip in. This isn't what I was going to say, but they kind of chip in, and then they're like, oh, so and so talking here, and I'm like, that's quite funny, because it's just like teammates hanging out. I like the order that they put things in this book, because for me, order is very important when it comes to learning. I don't see the point in jumping into things that are far too difficult to grasp the concept as a whole, and then some, if you've just started something and there's no, for example, there's no point in talking about weird as in WYRD, to somebody who has no idea of the background of the Nordic traditions and faiths, who doesn't understand history and culture at that time in history. And also, I think that if somebody had heard of a similar concept to weird but from another tradition or another religion, they're going to maybe try and accept it as that, because that is what we do, isn't it? For example, if you hear about karma, it's very easy to kind of say, well, weird's like karma, because it is, but it's not just that. So I think that it's important the way that they write it, because they give you juicy information right from the get-go, but they kind of hold back for information, and they tell you why sometimes, or no, they hold back for information sometimes, should I say, and they tell you why. But you're certainly not going to be disappointed with the information in this book. I'm trying to think of all the things I wanted to say, because I read this one before I read that one. Now I've lost some of the things I wanted to say. One of my favourite chapters, or sections, because it's 2 chapters in this book, is chapter 7 and chapter 8. So chapter 7, they talk about sacred images, altar work and god posts, and in chapter 8 they talk about right action and doing the work, so doing things right, and what that really means. But I really liked chapter 7 because there was information in there I'd never heard of before, and I always find it so interesting learning about the northern traditions and the Nordic faiths, because there are so many things that are similar and so yet totally not opposite. They're very similar, but they just don't seem to mesh. You can do things so on the surface, if nobody spoke to you, they could just see what you were doing. They could easily think that you were Asatru, or they could easily think that you were Wiccan. You know, it's, well, they probably wouldn't based on your clothing, but you know. I'm really disappointed in myself that I can't think of all the epic things that I wanted to say. Oh, here's something. Okay, so what I do want to say about this book is it very much reminds you, not only does it constantly remind you from the point of view of a solitary practitioner, but it also reminds you of the modernisation of the religion as well. It constantly kind of points out that we are not in that place in time where we can do the same things that they did then, even though some people disagree, and that's fine, I guess, for them, as long as they're not hurting anybody. But it gives us this more modern interpretation of texts and of laws from back then, but it also shows us the different ways of practicing. So something that I find really lovely, and that when I first, in fact, let me try and get a better, when I first, some of you are going to cringe now, but I do this to my books too. When I first came to looking at the northern traditions, it was this idea of god posts, because even as a child, tiki posts used to really frighten me, but used to really interest me. So here are some images of god posts. I think that's Frey at the top with the very large phallus, which they like to stick around, and that's his wife Gerda on the bottom. But yeah, I won't go on, but I really did like this book. I would give this book an 8. The only reason I'm giving this book an 8 and not a 9 is because I don't know if it was both of them, I don't know which one it was, authors. Even though I really, really like this book, and I don't hold it against them. There are some moments in the book where you feel not persuaded. They don't at all make you feel like you have to believe what they believe, but they do kind of let you know what they agree with and what they don't agree with. And fair enough, I'm not Wiccan anymore, but sometimes the way that they talk about Wiccans and the way they talk about pagans and New Age witches and stuff like that is less flattering than how they talk about their own beliefs. And I think if you're an author, if you're given that power of speech and you're given a voice, you should really do your best to try and talk for everyone and not just you and the people that agree with you. So it would be a 9. I just think that, and you can tell that they tried not to. I think it just slipped sometimes. So it would be a 9, but I'm giving it an 8 for that. But that isn't based on the information in here. That's based on how the author's attitude kind of slips through sometimes, and maybe they didn't even realise that what they were saying was a bit, you know. So yeah, so I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Would have been a 9. Don't like people being mean. Okay, so I will see you guys in a video soon. Blessed be.